The coping and seething has begun. After spending the past 5 years hyping up Elden Ring as one of the best games of the decade, one of the best games ever made, a game that would never, ever come to Nintendo consoles, we are not only getting an Elden Ring port, we are also getting a sequel from the same developer coming exclusively to Nintendo Switch 2. A sequel that seems to have had more work put into it than Elden Ring. And of course, people are like coping and seething about this. They're still trying to gaslight you to think that this game is going to come to other platforms. But in actuality, Nintendo clearly foresaw the success of Elden Ring, foresaw the success of Fromslopware, and immediately commissioned an exclusive title from the developer just before they blew up. So the end result of that is that the game of the decade contender that you propped up as a massive Nintendo killer, something that was bigger and better than Zelda, something that was like, game of the decade, that developer has knelt and has bent the knee to Nintendo and is developing exclusive software on their console. So what you're seeing is a bit of divide in the community where you're seeing now like a bunch of people are acting excited about this, that they're excited about Duskbloods, they're excited about the future of the company. They expect Fromslopware to get bigger and better, but you also have the group of people who are seething. You have the vast majority of the Fromslop audience who are upset that they are producing a Nintendo exclusive. And right now we're still in that early stages of seeing this happen, where people are still like gaslighting themselves that they're thinking this is going to get ported over. But in actuality, it is not. This is going to get locked down as a Nintendo exclusive forever, that this is going to be the future of Fromslop, where this is clearly where they're going to go after Elden Ring. This is the future of the company. Like, they are going to be a second-party developer for Nintendo, producing Duskbloods. And I don't know if Duskbloods is going to fix any of the problems that Elden Ring has, but the simple fact of the matter is we are going to see a lot of people freak out about this. They are going to say that partnering with Nintendo was a mistake, that they're holding them back. I've already seen a lot of people like push this line that like Nintendo has the worst online play, and Fromslop developing a game with online features on it is going to be detrimental to them. Like, people don't really seem to, they really are stuck in the past. Okay, they're really acting like it's like the mid 2000s and like all Nintendo has is that LAN adapter and like Phantasy Star Online 2. They're acting like Nintendo is just not competitive in the online space, when not only are they very much competitive, they are better than the alternatives. We are seeing Nintendo develop a completely original new IP with Fromslop exclusively on Nintendo Switch 2, and you're still seeing people bend over backwards to try and downplay it, like hoping that it's going to come to other consoles, or alternatively saying it's not going to be good to begin with because of Nintendo's involvement. Like, how quickly did the hype from Elden Ring dissipate? How quickly did the audience turn on Nintendo, turn on Fromslop the instant that they announced a partnership with Nintendo? How delusional are the audience? Like, how many people do you see who even accept Duskbloods as Fromslop's next major project? Bigger than Armored Core 6, bigger than Elden Ring, their next big thing, the future of the company is writing on this game, and yet everybody is just sitting there coping and seething because it's not multi-platform, because it is Nintendo exclusive. People are sitting there and seething and just getting upset over the reality that Nintendo won, and even these big like multi 10 million seller games cannot sell video game hardware the way they used to. Back in the day, Final Fantasy VII used to be this crushing success that was like, that defined RPGs for generations, even though Pokemon was immediately right out of the gate way bigger. The narrative back then was that you had to get a PlayStation to play Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy Tactics and like Xenogears and Parasite Eve and all these games that were coming out. Like, it was there used to be like a reason to get a PlayStation. And now, like, what exactly is there? Like, why exactly would I go out and get a PS4 for Elden Ring? Elden Ring is a PS4 game, by the way, when I could just wait a couple of years, get a better version of the game on Nintendo Switch 2, and eventually get a sequel of that game exclusive to Nintendo hardware. Like, why would I ever support PlayStation, Xbox, or PC when everything is just going to come out on Nintendo anyway? Like, I am so swamped with high quality games all the time on Nintendo hardware that I don't have time for PC. I don't have time for Xbox or PlayStation. I'm endlessly playing my endless amount of Nintendo games exclusive to my Nintendo hardware. And as a result of that, I don't really have any incentive or desire to branch out and like do anything else. Because, as we've seen with Elden Ring, as we're going to see with Baldur's Gate 3 and especially Expedition 33, like these games are going to get ported over to Nintendo eventually. So there is no reason to ever rush out and buy them. Nier Automata has been ported over. Yakuza 0 has been ported over. Like, we have seen dozens and dozens of examples of this over the years. Like, none of these heavy hitter games that people say are like culturally defining classics are exclusive to platforms other than Nintendo. They are not multi-plat games. They are coming to Nintendo eventually, and as a result of that, I see no reason to rush out and buy them or care about them at all. If you're not releasing day one on Nintendo hardware, I'm simply not going to buy you. And that's a trend that we are seeing a lot of in recent years. It's becoming more and more common for people to pass up on these kind of lazy third-party games for this reason. Like, and Fromslop, in a lot of ways, is probably the last stand of this kind of ideology. In a lot of ways, Fromslop is the last major success that PlayStation ever generated. It's kind of like, how like Dark Souls, how like the entire world is in decay, and you're trying to keep it in like this endless loop. Like, it's kind of like that. Like, Dark Souls is like going through the game over and over again to keep the fires at PlayStation lit, to try and keep the momentum that Final Fantasy VII established going. And in reality, every single time it gets a little bit weaker. It gets a little bit weaker. It gets a little bit weaker until finally it is completely snuffed out. And the age of Nintendo is upon us. It's interesting kind of seeing the contrast between the fan narrative and like the developer narrative, because the developers were very open about the fact that Elden Ring was not a major project for them. It was just something like pumped out. It was something lazy. It was something they didn't give a shit about. And like people worshipped it because, like, oh, it's Elden Ring. It's Elden Ring. And, even back then, they were thinking about Duskbloods. They were thinking about like developing this new exciting game for Nintendo consoles, and they knew that was the future for their company. And they were hinting towards interviews. They were like building up to it. And now that it's finally here, nobody cares about it at all because it's a Nintendo exclusive. We are going to see a complete and total collapse of the Fromslop narrative in our lifetimes, and there is nothing you can do to stop